Well, welcome to Applied Day 2017. This is session number 3. This is a session about ERP integration. Applied Day 2017, this is a series of webinars that Applied Engineering gives each year to share with our clients, the manufacturing, engineering, and technology industry. Not necessarily the future of technology, but what is currently available that you can implement in your organization. So Applied we're really here to help you with today's challenges, and I'd encourage you to check out all the presentations of Applied Day 2017 to get a full picture of how we're helping our clients. A couple of the other sessions first of all, this morning was the Internet of Things and manufacturing dashboards, and then there was a session on data management. There's also tomorrow, there's a great session on a customer testimonial. We have a session on electrical design, and as Eric mentioned in his, we have a session on Autodesk Fusion Lifecycle as well. Today's session is on ERP integration. My name is Aaron Sorensen. My background is in IT with 15 years of work with Microsoft, helping customers select and deploy enterprise software. I get involved in understanding a customer's business and technical needs, and then help mapping that to what it is that we can do, how we can help different clients in their organizations. Also presenting with me is Josh Rader. Josh and I were actually in separate offices, and so we're presenting remotely, and Josh, maybe you could just give a little on your background.
Hello, this is Josh Rader. I am the Director of IT Services here at Applied. I've been with Applied for just over 4 years. I have 14 years of experience in the IT industry, hold a bachelor's in Management Information Systems and a master's in Management Information Systems as well. My experiences have been focused heavily on software development and project management, while utilizing my Lean Six Sigma training to provide best fit solutions to resolve business challenges.
So Josh, maybe you could start us off by giving a little background on Applied Engineering and what makes us kind of a unique organization.
Yes, our competitive advantage is our pillars. So the first being top talent, where we have full-time engineers and IT experts to fit your project or fit into your team and attack any problem head-on. The second being total technology, where we deliver the technology and tools to power both your engineering department and your entire business. The third is absolute adaptability. We are built to scale, so we can flex to fit your work style and project needs.
Okay, and here's there's a great video on our website that talks about our pillars as well, and we would encourage you to go to the front page of our website and take a look at that video that walks through, I think in about 3 minutes, the background of Applied Engineering and how we meet the needs for our engineering and our IT clients. We're here to bring you as Josh mentioned, we're here to bring you the expertise and the talent that we have to help you solve your problems of today and in the future, and in a way that brings you what we think is the best talent, the best technology, in a way that's convenient for your organization. So here's some things that we're going to be talking about today. We speak with customers, Josh and I do regularly, who have questions about integrating their ERP data with other systems. And we find that the answer to that kind of question involves a lot of different variables, some of which are on the screen, and we'll cover those today. So the topic is on ERP integration. Maybe we just start at the very base level, and that is security. As we're delivering information to other constituents, we're taking data out of a secure system and delivering that to other people inside the organization, whether it's for view only or bidirectional access. Josh will talk about that here in a bit. But security is really the highest priority. Our clients oftentimes have a well thought out security protocol, And of course, they want our applications that we build to adhere to that same system. An example would be if we build a system, the IT staff of our client, they don't want their employees to have to learn a new username and a new password for every system. So they want to have that unified login. And to simplify the work of our client's IT staff when we build an application, we wanted to build on that foundation of a unified security login that enables every system to treat every user in the same way. So let's talk about view-only access.
Yeah, so thanks, Aaron. Basically, view-only access, I guess, is a form of data access that closely resembles the read-only status, that our audience is probably very familiar with. Having the ability to view data without being allowed to change that data creates endless opportunities for information management while not having to worry about the data corruption occurring. This is a very important concept, when you start looking at the data that is housed within your enterprise resource planning system, because that data is typically considered the master data or the data that is agreed upon and shared across the enterprise. Now imagine having that master data available to your employees in all different areas within the organization so that they can view the latest information that is relevant to helping them perform their job duties. Being able to provide this data to your employees is sometimes threefold. It oftentimes will help them reach the optimal efficiency, productivity, and satisfaction within their working environment. Another example of access to master data is in the form of inventory or assets. Having accurate inventory is one thing, but having visibility to that inventory in real time can go a long ways in helping make good everyday business decisions. Such things, planning, purchasing, costing, and scheduling are just a few of the functions that rely heavily on the visibility of up-to-date inventory being shared across the enterprise without fear of mistakenly being updated when it shouldn't be.
So let's take a couple of examples of where read-only access would be used, or view-only access. One is in dashboards. A dashboard or KPIs, this is an opportunity to take related data from a single source or multiple source and merge it into a real easy-to-use interface. A previous presentation done this morning was all about KPIs and dashboards, and so I would encourage you to take a look at that one as well. There's a great opportunity for you to engage with your constituents using this kind of a visual experience to inform, educate, and motivate your staff by this good information all brought together in a visual form. Another is providing mobile access. So information needs to get to the right person, whether it be information coming out of one application or information coming out of a database. Presenting that different protocols is it's a great way to get real-time information into the hands of people who need that to do their day-to-day work. So as I mentioned, this information can be database driven. You can say every half an hour send this information out to these this set of constituents, or maybe when a certain trigger happens in an application, send a notification to a certain individual. All of that is accessible in a view-only kind of a situation, and it presents information out to the constituents that need it.
Yeah, so another, I guess, form here of access is termed bidirectional. Bidirectional meaning that the data can flow in both directions, either from a point of origin device to the ERP system, or from the ERP system to a place where it can be accessed by another system. Utilizing a bidirectional form of access allows for significant advantages by ensuring that the information is available company-wide in real time. A good example that can be used here would be that of inventory control transaction. When you think of a typical inventory transaction and what needs to happen to get that transaction into your ERP system, It oftentimes consists of using multiple autonomous systems, maybe multiple steps, and creates an increased risk for inaccuracy and delays in processing. Now take, for example, the use of a handheld device that is connected via Wi-Fi to complete that same inventory transaction using bidirectional access to your ERP system. By using the bidirectional access, it eliminates the multiple step process and allows for real-time inventory data. Another great example of using bidirectional access is in the form of using devices to automate the creation of something along the lines of work orders, shop orders, or maybe even job creation. Many machines today within a manufacturing environment are being monitored or even driven by PLCs. These PLCs typically will have the ability to be connected to the network and to populate data into a database through the use of open protocols. When those machines being monitored by a PLC reach their identified set number of cycles and need maintenance, the open protocol communication can be used to trigger an event and automate the creation of a maintenance work order within your ERP system.
So let's take a look at another good what we think is a good bidirectional example, and that is with CAD data. Let's take a look at item part validation. To ensure that parts information in your ERP system matches your model, makes your product delivery process much easier. So as you're working between systems and validating that the items that are in your ERP and your inventory system are matching up to what is in your 3D model, is going to save you a lot of time down the line. Another opportunity is in purchase parts. So the purchase parts change regularly, so validating that a part is still available or a preferred part, that'll save you last-minute headaches as well. Often these purchase parts are cycled, and there's a new revision, and you want to make sure that a new product that you're building or an update to a product that you're building encompasses all the latest and most accurate information. What we're finding is all the work that's going into a 3D model and its bill of materials is sometimes an overlooked asset in the organization. So not only are professionals building these models, they're building them to the specifications that have been approved throughout the entire company. So all the way from product management through marketing, through all of the levels necessary, they're building these products to an accurate representation, and they're the most accurate information that's anywhere in the company. Some of our clients have identified the CAD bill of materials as the single source of the truth, which drives the rest of the ERP bill of materials process. Others we're finding are using this asset as the foundation even of their marketing and their technical publications as well. So Eric, in his session, he talked about data management. There are several options, as he mentioned, and you'll want to listen to that presentation as well. But so whether you're using SolidWorks, Inventor, and storing the data using Autodesk Vault, or any kind of combination of systems, whether you store your data locally on a PC or on the network, on a network drive, or in the cloud, we can integrate that data. But the more organized and accessible your data is, that will reduce, of course, the complexity and integrating that data with your ERP system.
All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the data access methods that are available for ERP integrations. There are a number of different methods that exist for accessing data within your ERP system. Each one comes with their own pros and cons, obviously, that can be evaluated before making a decision on which method you would choose to use in any given situation. Although each of these methods do exist, it doesn't necessarily mean that each organization has the ability to choose which methods they want to use, because sometimes we find that this decision is heavily influenced by the IT group that is in charge of maintaining their ERP system. The first method you can see here is termed direct access. What this means is that you essentially have direct access to the database that your ERP system is sitting on. Although you have direct access, we always suggest using a software such as an MVC, Model View Controller, to control the data being passed to the database in order to prevent data corruption of any sort. This direct access method is actually becoming a little bit more rare as the technology continues to grow and security and ease of use using other methods increase here. The groups in charge of maintaining the master data typically prefer that other methods be looked at first and that direct access only be used if it is necessary for the situation. The next method we have here for data access is through the use of staging tables. Staging table is just a database table that basically contains your business data in some form. The term staging is the process of preparing that business data, typically taken from one or more business applications. In its simplest form, staging just means placing something in a specific location to be accessed at a later time. One of the biggest benefits to using staging tables for integration with an ERP system is that the ERP system can be the one in control, when to process the data into the master data. This also gives freedom to set intervals, how frequent you want the ERP system to look for new data to process. Basically based on the processing workload, the intervals can be near real time, or they can range up to hours, days, and weeks if need be. Using a staging table also helps ensure data integrity and security due to the fact that an application doesn't have direct access to the data. Next here, you have the secure view data access method. This was briefly mentioned earlier in our presentation. However, the data is a view-only access or read-only. But this additional piece to this is that the information that is visible through a secure view is dependent upon the definition of the security profile or group that the user is part of. If a user is connected with restricted security, say something that a user that works out on the shop floor and is specific to a work area, the information that that user can see may be restricted to only the data that is defined within their profile, maybe their group or their role. This is a feature that can allow your organization to define levels of access to be in order to different levels of visibility to shared master data within your ERP system as well. On a side note, one thing that I wanted to mention is that while using any one of these data access methods, each one is only good if you're able to reach the server or database that your ERP system is sitting on. This is where the use of high availability systems becomes a benefit. High availability in this case, I guess, basically means that a system that is continuously operational. You may have heard the term clustering or failover. Most of the major database providers, Oracle, SQL Server, etc., they have technologies in place that allow for the use within a high availability configuration environment. The physical configuration of this type of environment is typically 2 servers, and they can be virtual, sitting connected via an Ethernet cable, typically called the heartbeat. The clustering software then monitors the status of the active server node, and if trouble occurs, the signal is sent to the failover server, which then becomes the active node and takes over the processing of the high availability environment. So another form of secure data that we recognize here at Applied is that of our team members and their access to confidential customer data. Our team works with customers that require some of the highest levels of security. While working, within a system, there are technologies and methods that can be used for securing the data, but with personnel, those same methods aren't necessarily available. In working with law enforcement or government agencies or any of our customers, we make it a first priority to keep our customers' data safe and secure, and we focus on standards that will help our customer system remain safe and secure as well. We take pride in our long-standing relationships with our customers and understand that confidential and proprietary information is often a key factor to the success of a business. We also pride ourselves in the high level of quality services to our customers with the strictest confidentiality, and we make sure that this is reflected within our hiring process anytime we add new members to our team as well. Our team members go through a series of background checks that are often required before gaining access to otherwise restricted data.
So let's take a look at the application lifecycle. So the question might be, when and where does applied engineering get involved? Well, it's somewhere in excuse me, it's somewhere in this continuum, whether it's bringing the development of a new application, envisioning of that, the actual coding and launch of a new application, whether it be in the maintenance or whether it be in the decommissioning. We'll talk about that after a bit. So what we need to remember, though, is that in any kind of an organization, there are often multiple life cycles that are simultaneous. So, you know, maybe a big life cycle here, a smaller life cycle maybe for a sub-application, and that affects any integration work that we do. We need to make sure that we're not disrupting and we're adding value to the entire organization. Sometimes we feel like the life cycle looks like this. You know, there's a year or two of planning, a year or two of deployment, and it seems like systems just go on and on. Their life goes well beyond what anybody ever expected the life of an application to be, and the technology starts to get old, and there's not a lot of motivation to work on that anymore. We get involved in that as well. End-of-life applications or system maintenance can sometimes be a challenge to motivate employees and allow them to work on new and interesting information. If we go back to this this graphic, you can see as that line starts to turn downward, that might mean that the technology is either no longer supported or is being phased out of the organization, and it's time for employees of our client to start working on something new, something that will motivate them, something that is part of their future. And they want to hand that off to someone like applied engineering and continue the maintenance and then go through the decommissioning process or end-of-lifing process of an application. And we certainly do that. That's part of the challenges of any organization, is how do we spool up and then spool down an application. Another life cycle, let's think about the acquisition and overall life cycle of an ERP solution, something that you might buy. It starts out, as you might see here, like an easy button, right? Then when we get into the project, we realize there's a lot more depth to an ERP solution than just one piece. There's different databases, there's different modules, there's different components, there's a lot of depth to an ERP solution. Then oftentimes you branch out. As you deploy some of the core functionality, you might then deploy some of the sub-modules, or maybe an integrated application, or maybe have something that's connected to the solution. And this often goes on for years and years until maybe in the end your application, your ERP application, looks something like this. Maybe this is outlandish or maybe too complicated, but you get the idea that oftentimes ERP solutions are very customized, and that's one of the challenges, is that it is tailored to your organization. So the question might be, how does applied engineering work in that kind of a scenario? And we think of a customized ERP solution as not so much technology, a technology challenge. Sometimes we get asked, are you certified in A, B, or C? Well, we don't really take on those kinds of certifications, because as you can see with a complex ERP solution, it ends up being tailored to your organization. So what we find is that this is more of a people problem. It's more of a relationship issue that we can solve versus just a technology issue. We work across many different databases, many different ERP solutions, and can solve problems across the board. But what we do that we think is unique is we go through an alignment process with your organization, and we learn the organization, we learn the applications, and we have, since we're an employee-owned organization, we hire great people and we keep them around so that when there's a project and then a subsequent project and then a subsequent project, that we can be, when we come on site or when we start again spooling up a new project, we can be what we think is pretty immediately effective just because of our experience in working in our client's environment.
So continuing on with some of the challenges that we see, a most common one here, I guess, is that of key staff retirement. So we see this a lot in speaking with customers, is that one of their key staff members that either will be or has already retired. So basically, the trouble is that this individual has oftentimes been with the organization, for many years and has a deep sense of what we call tribal knowledge. That tribal knowledge exists if you ever find yourself asking things like, how does that get processed, or what needs to happen to get something to work, when you have always been used to it just happening. Chances are this key individual basically had the experience and knowledge behind the processing, and now that knowledge is unavailable. Another area that we see this occur within a system basically is one that was designed and developed by that key individual, and this was typically developed over a number of years, adding certain features, adding certain constraints, have been implemented, and things just worked. Now you take the situation of that individual is leaving or has left and essentially is now disconnected from the system, and that knowledge behind the system is now unavailable. The end result is often an attempt to maintain that system with only minimal changes because of the fear of breaking something. And typically what happens is it ultimately results in a solution that really only lives or works for a few years before the technologies become outdated, or the organization, I guess, outgrows the capabilities of that system.
So let's take a look at another challenge. Sometimes the systems we work on, we find, look like this. And so we've got customer information on the left, we got customer information on the right. There's similar information in multiple systems. There's some processing that goes on in between. And we got redundant systems that have similar data. And oftentimes there's an export process out of one. There's some data management that goes on, some manipulation, and then an import to try to keep everything in sync. We've seen, this doesn't need to be old technology, we've seen this with even new or cloud technology where you have separate systems that are in the cloud, managed separately, and they share data, and they need to, information needs to transfer from one to another. So it's really not a bad solution, but sometimes it is time consuming, it's often error prone, and it's not necessary. Even though they're cloud solutions, we can still connect them. So one way to do that would be just to have a web service, building a web service. So from an engineering perspective, one thing that we always look for is processes that don't add value, and removing those non-value add process out of the system. And so this would be one way where if there's an export process and then there's some human intervention, maybe manipulating the data in some way, running some calculations, or exporting out into a spreadsheet and then importing that back into another system, building some kind of an integration between that, or maybe a web-based service, can support not only that process, but it can support your security, and it can automate that process as well, and really reduce all the implications of that.
So continuing on with some more challenges that we typically see is, as things become more technologically advanced, so do the complexities involved with making systems work together. So here at Applied, we always strive to make sure that the complexities remain on the back end, keep that behind the scenes, away from the user experience. And in order to achieve this, we aim for creating a simplified user interface that matches the requirements of what needs to be done, basically to complete the job and include nothing more that could confuse or take attention away from the required task. So rather than building a large and complex user interface, we found that it is most of the time beneficial to create simple single-step user interfaces to streamline the requirements of the tasks at hand. So having a simple user interface to follow creates a less intimidating and more straightforward user experience for your employees. And this, obviously, in return, should create a more enjoyable working environment for your employees as well.
So that brings us to the close of our session about ERP integration with some of its opportunities and challenges. We would recommend that if you have questions, submit them through the question portal on the webinar, and we can take some of those. Our clients, Josh and I can both attest, our clients have expressed many reasons for working with Applied to build an integration with their ERP solution. And we don't say that we have any magic potion or anything, but we're here to guide the process. We're here to develop solutions as needed. In the end, really, no matter the technology or the application, if there's a reason and a value to building integration, we think that we can, at least we'd like to talk to you about how you could accomplish that and how we might be able to help you through that process. So we'll take some questions. Josh, maybe we can get to some questions.
Sounds good. Yes, there's one here. It says there's oftentimes a number of different systems being used within an organization. How do you determine what system is the best to integrate first? Good question there. It's actually one that we get asked quite often. We use the phrase, I guess, what is the lowest hanging fruit? Meaning what system can be integrated first and have a significant impact to show the results? So in order to do this, we typically follow a process here that includes a few steps, I guess. The first, basically what we need to do is become familiar with the customer's environment and the systems that they are using before we can really provide any useful suggestions back to that customer. Basically then what we do is we'll take that information, we'll take it into account, the level of complexity, maybe what the goal of each system being integrated would be, and then finally basically just analyze that information, those details that come from those first couple steps. Then we're able to make suggestions, what level of effort would be required for each system that would be wanting to, I guess that you guys would want to integrate. Can then provide our suggestions on how to proceed. But ultimately, we'd like to let the customer make the decision based upon the information and suggestions that we have provided, and typically follow in line with what their business priorities are. Good question.
Okay, any other questions? Josh, I think one that we often get asked is about how to determine the value that there might be in an ERP integration. And I can take that. There's another question that came in just now. Maybe I could have you think about that as I'm answering this other one, and just be prepared for that. There's a question came in, says what is involved in building a private cloud? So we can take that here in a bit. And of course, if you have other questions, enter them into the portal and we'll get to them. So the question, how do you determine the value? Well, it's not always, we find that it's not always as easy as just doing a return on investment, reducing labor, reducing errors, reducing time. Sometimes it's hard to quantify. Of course, as an engineering company, we like things that are quantified, but sometimes it just it comes down to wanting to serve your constituents in a better way, whether it be customer satisfaction. We find on occasion that there's a significant delay if there's no integration between two systems. There's a substantial delay in the information getting from one system, then to another, and then finally out to the constituent. So a delay of notifying that either something is out of stock, or delay notification that this is going to ship in this kind of a time frame, or maybe you get inaccurate information that says that we have these 5 things in stock when in fact they're not. So oftentimes there's a customer satisfaction issue that's out there that you can't really identify and quantify the ROI, but you know that it's an overall satisfaction issue. Another reason might be that you want to have an employee satisfaction issue. As I mentioned, staff really don't want to, when there's a new application, they don't want to learn multiple logins and multiple passwords for different systems. That when they log in, they want their information to be available, and it's tracking information pertinent to them and giving them security pertinent to them. So it's ideal if we can have a return on investment, if we can measure ourselves that way, but that's not always the case. So the value is oftentimes determined by pain and by what you want to focus on as an organization. And I guess that's what we see as we talk to our clients. So Josh, I'll just restate the question here. What's involved in building a private cloud?
Excellent. Yeah. So basically, I think anytime you start talking about the cloud, it's interesting because certain organizations, they're still, in my mind, still getting used to the idea of the cloud and the security features and things like that that actually are involved. Anytime you start sending data outside of your 4 walls, people get pretty concerned about that. I will say that that's obviously becoming more secure. Technologies being used to keep that data secure. The big thing in relation to ERP integrations is, again, that connectivity. Finding the source that you are obviously going to utilize as the cloud. There are a lot of ERP solutions that exist today within the cloud, and there's some big advantages to that, simply because you are no longer responsible for maintaining the hardware. Basically, the cloud maintains itself, essentially. That's some of the features that you pay for. So in order to, what is involved in building the cloud, a lot of it is in fact research in the way of what best fits your needs, I guess, to provide the solution. But again, in relation to the ERP integrations piece of it, the tools, the technologies that are being used today to process that data securely, it's a matter of pointing it to the cloud rather than pointing it to the hardware that is essentially sitting inside of your 4 walls. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Aaron, but
no, I think that's good. It does require some interaction. Your question, Mark, has to do with. It seems like maybe there's a security concern that you have, and you're welcome to contact either Josh or myself. You can email sales@go-apply.com, and we certainly can follow up with you on that. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in, there's a couple of things. We'll just run through these additional slides. We do have an unlimited training offering. This is a great value, so check that out as well. Contact your sales representative. Also hosting a LinkedIn Inventor user group on LinkedIn, so check that out. There's some links that you have there as well. And make sure that you fill out the survey and answer the quick questions, and we'd appreciate the feedback. So I'm looking, Josh, at the question portal, and I'm not seeing any additional questions, so I think we'll just wrap it up and say we appreciate all of you for joining us. Don't forget that all of these sessions are recorded, so you can go back and listen to the previous sessions. There are 3 more sessions tomorrow, and we encourage you to join those as well. So thanks very much, and we look forward to serving you in the future.
Thank you all for attending.